What's up, Zach here, and today I've got the all-new New Balance CT Rally 2. Thanks to New Balance for getting me a pair of these to check out. However, as always, this video is unsponsored. All opinions, good, bad, and indifferent, all my own. And a lot to go over in these, especially with the fit. These are not the same as the CT Rally 1 or the Lav. These might be one of the most unique fitting shoes, especially in the tennis space, that I have come across. And well, outdoor basketball, pickleball as well. These things definitely have a lot going on in that fit department. Look at the insole on these things. It's kind of that New Balance, like that kind of rubbery polyurethane type insole. It is pretty substantial in here, but obviously you can fit an orthotic. Now, number one, the tongue on these things is like really thick going down the pipe. The more proximal tongue is actually really thin right in the middle. You do get two pads on the outside, but lace irritation on these things is pretty much zilch. I mean, if you can find lace irritation, you probably have a little bit of a bump in the wrong spot on the top of your foot. The heel counter on these things, number one, you do get one over here, you get two external heel counters. They do, I mean, it's bridge, so, but this kind of gets thinner here, but basically medial and lateral side. And then as you go down, it's also a pretty thick internal heel counter as well. So really everything in the uppers meant for a lot of containment, especially with all the polyurethane. I mean, it kind of reminds me of like an Asics Gel Resolution or an Asics Cord FF shoe. So all through the uppers, a ton of polyurethane. But then you get textile and TPU here in the uppers, kind of in between, interspersed and all that. And then, interestingly enough, underneath that, you actually do get quite a decent amount of padding in the toe box. The laces, kind of weird. On the medial side, they're cuffed on the inside, obviously try to protect them a little bit more, but they're cuffed in polyurethane. But it kind of looks like it's supposed to be a textile cuff, like on the outside, because on the outside it's a textile cuff. You do not get a runner's knot in these things. Heel slippage, I would say, is mild. They do fit orthotics okay, and the heel slippage with that was mild. You do get a nice big old tongue gusset there. But like I said, I think that the big story here is the containment in the rear foot, as well as a ton of polyurethane containment kind of throughout the shoe. So performs a lot like a Cord FF shoe, but obviously with traditional very thick three-piece tongue and ridiculous containment in the rear foot. All right, but getting into the midsole teardown of the CT Rally, this is where things really, you need to start paying attention. Now, number one, look at the periphery. The shank here comes up on the lateral side, as well as is continuous on the medial side. And it kind of looks like this is dual density Fresh Foam X, but as you tear the shoe open, as you can see, this is just one big slab of Fresh Foam X. Now, this is a 2.9 centimeter stack height of Fresh Foam X. That is a ton. And then it's a 1.2 centimeter drop. So really not a lot of issues with any Achilles or anything. It's going to put it on slack pretty good for you. This is not nearly a zero drop shoe. But the one thing I want to kind of put your, call your attention to is that the heel almost, you kind of sink into it here. I mean, you don't sink into it, the durometer of the foam, like 20.5. It is dense fresh foam, but you get a little bit of a hump up here right in the more proximal arch, and that combined with the stiff shank that goes all the way around the shoe like rails does create this little hump up right here, and we'll talk about that in the fit section. Now, so just remember that. Now, we did get 34 centimeters bounce height in the rear foot and then 32 in the forefoot. That is pretty typical for Fresh Foam X. One thing I noticed about Fresh Foam X is, even though it feels really, cushy to the finger, like I said, 20.5 on the durometer, underfoot, when you first put these on, these almost feel stiff, right? Like kind of pushing down on them. I mean, they do not feel super plush and buttery. Once you break them in, you start to feel that more, but don't expect like the Fresh Foam BB line type Fresh Foam feeling in these things. It is a much more dense feeling foam. Now with that comes a ton of stability, right? I mean, a lot of performance, a lot of dense shock absorptions. That's all great. It's just that it's not the ultra plush feeling Fresh Foam X off the jump that you'll get with some of the basketball products. But once you break them in, it definitely starts feeling more and more and more like that. And looking at the springboard effect of these things on the tensiometer, took 68 newtons to get this thing to 45 degrees. That's number one, the shank, but number two, like I said, how dense the Fresh Foam X is in these things. So you are going to get quite a bit of snap from that shank. Like I said, the shoe, a little bit stiff. Like I said, there's good and bad to that, just depends on what you want. What is by far the most unique part of the CT Rally 2 is the outsole tread. As you can see, it looks like a basketball shoe in terms of traction. It's these little pods of herringbone. Now, under the big toe joint, it is a little bit thicker, a little bit chunkier rubber, so it is more reinforced for sliding under the big toe. It gets a little bit wider open here. I mean, it's subtle, but it does get a little more wide open here on the lateral side. Obviously, on the medial heel, you just get a little more normal razor herringbone, but from lateral heel into the forefoot, this looks like that smaller, more fine-tuned traction of something meant for hardwood. Now, this Endor rubber only came in at 18.75 on the durometer. I mean, I was expecting mid-20s on this thing, especially for, you know, how small the traction is, right? Like kind of how more fine-tuned that traction is. However, look at this thing on the outsole durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper. And I mean, I didn't get a millimeter of damage on this at all. I mean, this is no problem whatsoever. So I'm looking forward to seeing 3 months later, people that slide a lot, what this does. I had zero problems. I've had these for a few weeks, and I've been wearing them a lot. Actually, you know what? Now that I say that, I have get a little bit of delamination here on the medial heel. But other than that, like that's actually not the part I thought was going to delaminate, but everything else looks just fine. So yeah, I honestly, I couldn't tell you what these are going to do in 3 months. Typically, if this were like big, chunky New Balance rubber, like normal, and, durometer comes in mid-20s, I'd say, these will last, these will last anything. But with this one, this is new territory, at least for me. So I'm excited to see. Outsole durability test did just fine. I think if you don't slide at all, I think they'll be just fine. But sliding, I'm very interested to hear. So I want, please, in a couple months, leave me a comment down below, because if they're onto something, this could be a really interesting way of providing a little bit more, I don't know about buttery traction, but easier transition of step, smoother transition step each way, but also getting enough grip. Because like I said, each pod has its own grip, and then, you get the herringbone in each one. So yeah, it's unique, and I'm excited to see what people think about it. All right, but getting into the weird, wild, and wacky of these things, the fit of the CT Rally is something you really got to pay attention to. Now, I'll start with the normal stuff. They do come in at 28.8 centimeters in length, 9.7 centimeters of metatarsal width for the D, and you get 10 in the 2E, so, a decent amount of room there. 6.5 centimeters of toe box width. That's not super wide up there. 50-degree toe box taper, which is pretty standard for most shoes nowadays, the way I'm doing it in the distal toe box. And then a lash shape is 12 degrees of inflare. So really pretty typical there. In terms of resting position of eversion, 1 degree, loaded with 1,000 newtons, 1 degree. Like I said, these things are strong. They are not going anywhere. They're not going to allow a lot of movement. Now, in terms of that, I said before, that hump up right here in the rear foot, this is what caused me the most amount of issues. Now, when I thought the D width, when I measured them, I was like, oh, the D width's going to be just fine for me. I'll start with that one, then I'll go to the 2E. These gave me so much pain on my 5th metatarsal base, right? It's right here. Right back here, because that's where the hump up was, right underneath. You can see it up here. This is where it gave me the most irritation. And the reason for that is because you had the shank that came up right here on there, and you had that little hump up right there. So you can feel the hump. When I went to the 2E, I had zero problems with any of this, right? I mean, I shouldn't say zero. It still took 30 minutes, 40 minutes for me to break it in. But after that, I was fine. I even put orthotics in there. In the D1, it still was irritating me. But if I had the 2E, I was fine. So I'd say if you're a narrow foot, go with the D. I think it's fine. If you are a medium, here's the thing. I think if you're a medium, if you're a 2E, if you've ever passed a wide load truck on a highway, I would go with the 2E because you get all the benefits of this, because when you put it on, the arch support in these things is almost equal to a pretty decent flexible over-the-counter orthotic. I mean, there is so much support in this thing for your lateral arch, medial arch. I mean, it's crazy because it starts more proximal in the rear foot. So you're getting a ton of support in these things. I mean, they have support in spades. I've never seen a shoe support this much. It's just that if you don't get the width right, you're going to pay for it. So I'd say everybody but a narrow. I mean, if you go between a narrow and a medium, I think you can go with the D, but everybody else, either 2E, if you're a 4E, you better be going to the 4E. That's why they make them in the sizes, just get them. In terms of the snake bitten foot, like I just said, heel pain, ball of foot pain, arch pain, they are, yeah, one of the best on the market for sure. That dense Fresh Foam X, like I said, even though it isn't super pillowy and plush in this one, it does break into the point where you're almost like molding it around your arch, and that's just fantastic. Ankle sprainers, they are just fine. I mean, the lateral flange on these things, it's pretty just, it doesn't pop out, but you can see on the overhead camera, it's, you know, it's broad enough. I mean, for ankles, I think these are fantastic, especially because the rear foot stays so stable. Bunions and Taylor's bunions, I think in the 2E, I think they are just fine. In terms of like the toe box, it's not the widest toe box on the planet, but just because the 2E gets so wide, even with the taper on it, it's still decent. You know, you're still going to get enough room in the toe box. Like I said, it's different than the CT Rally 1 for sure. In terms, like I said, the CT Rally 1, at times I felt, you know, it was very plush, almost, you know, maybe for some people too plush. But this one kind of went toward more the rugged look. But I'll tell you what, you want a rugged shoe, outdoor basketball, pickleball, tennis. Of course, these are tennis shoes, but really all the big three, I don't think these are going to have a problem whatsoever. Like I said, I think the biggest question mark is the outsole tread. I can't wait to hear what happens in a few months on this. But I like that they're trying something. You know, they're trying to take lessons from another sport and bring it into tennis. And I think that is fantastic. I also think that this may have been a pickleball thing too, to make them attractive for pickleball players, because this also is a really good tread for pickleball as well. So I think there may have been, you know, a couple motivations there, but whatever it is, I'm glad we're seeing something different. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below, especially if you kind of like the direction of the 2s versus the 1s. So let me know in the comments down below. And if you do want to see the ASICS Gel Challenger 15 go under the knife, shoe that I kind of think is the real true successor to the Gel Resolution 9, make sure you click into this video right here, subscribe down below. I'll see you in that video.